Alright, no dilly-dallying today, we're hopping right into trivia for every single assist trophy in Smash Ultimate, with today's video starting with Riki and sliding over to the Devil. Oh, and we've been sticking with the Chartreuse rarity colors for a couple videos now, but I've gotten some ideas on even better ways to organize them. So today we're going to try out multiple ideas at the same time, those being Hot Pink with a Rose Gold line down the left side, and specifically the uncommon category is actually Periwinkle instead. Perfect, cool, let's go with that. Riki is a common assist from Xenoblade Chronicles who cannot be KO'd and has a pretty moderate restriction list. When he spawns in, he'll use an art at random. He'll do this a total of 4 times before disappearing, and overall he's got 6 arts that he can choose from. Happy Happy raises the speed of all nearby fighters. However, alongside increasing speed, it'll actually also increase launch distance. At first, I wasn't sure if this meant increasing how far you yourself get launched, or if it's an increase in your launch output, but we can test this with the help of some respawns since dying gets rid of the buff prematurely. So when Shulk loses the buff, his forward smash is not KOing, yet when Pyra loses the buff, she gets KO'd just fine. So this confirms that you yourself are dealing more knockback, not just mutually taking it, though the actual damage output is still the same. Anyways, I also used to think that it had unlimited range, but I did find out that it is actually the opposite of unlimited. If only there was a word for that. It's still got decent range though, but definitely possible to be out of it. So if you just spawned in Riki, you might want to stick close to him. Freeze-Innate will freeze nearby opponents, having a more limited range. This will deal 14% and, I guess, technically some knockback. I mean, we've already gone over how the freeze effect really isn't the best, so it's whatever. Yoink will pull nearby items towards Riki. Its range is more on the medium side, but still isn't infinite. And at these longer ranges where it does work, it's not guaranteed to bring the items to his location, rather just a bit closer. This effect can either be a good or bad thing depending on whether the opponent was closer to Riki than you at the time, but given how an opponent shouldn't want to be near Riki, it can still be helpful, or at the very least benign. Anyways, I always felt like this effect was pretty similar to Rosalina's gravitational pull, but this move also works on projectiles, so I was wondering about Riki, but as it turns out, he cannot yoink these. It still works on anything considered an item at least, but it was a bit much to relate it to gravitational pull, I guess. Bedtime will put nearby opponents to sleep. The sleep duration is actually pretty good, but its one big caveat is that it does not work on aerial opponents. So taking cues from things like Jigglypuff's Sing rather than Hero's Snooze, which is frankly such a shame because with its already limited range, requiring the opponent to be grounded is just way more situational. Speaking of which, the next art is Roly-Poly, which will trip nearby grounded opponents, and yep, just trip them.
Back in my day, we got that just for running.
The trip effect isn't necessarily useless, but again, you need to be grounded for it to work, and in a very specific timing of when the art gets used. If it covered the whole stage, then it might be a bit better, but as it currently stands, or I guess trips, at least it goes through shield? Whatever, man. And lastly, You Can Do It heals all nearby fighters for 20% health. The range seems to be about the same as Happy Happy's, pretty large but not infinite. Now whether or not it's good for the user is situational. Maybe you don't need the health but your opponent does, so that's kind of unfortunate, but get over it. I should point out that the weights for all of these effects are supposedly the same, meaning they should all have the exact same chance of happening, with a few stipulations. In all of my testing, with all of the arts I saw, I never once had Riki use the same art in a row. However, I did see the same art used within the same batch of 4, such as this Yoink used as the first and final art, or even for arts with timed buffs like Happy Happy, getting recast the moment it goes away here. So I guess at most you'll see the same spell 2 times in one batch, but if anyone has any experience to the contrary, just let me know. But before we get to the rest of our assist trophies, I would like to thank our video sponsor, Raighne. Spring is here, so I'll be going back outside a lot, and what better product to bring with me than Raighne's bone conduction headphones. These kinds of headphones sit outside of your ears, rather than in them, sending vibrations to your bones. This is comfortable, seamless, and it lets me still hear the outside world alongside whatever tunes I'm listening to. Not only is this just way safer than deafening yourself to your surroundings, but it really makes it feel like the world has background music. I was genuinely surprised by how good the audio quality was, while still letting me hear the beautiful sounds of nature. With 13 whole hours of battery life, waterproof and dustproof materials, and a slip-resistant layout, it's really easy to recommend to anyone hoping to listen to music while out and about. So if you'd like to try out these bone conduction headphones, go to buyraycon.com/pkbeatsbc to get 20% off your order, upgrading your listening experience. And thank you Raighne for sponsoring today's video. Color TV Game 15 is a common assist with a meager 15 HP and a pretty large restriction list. Oh, wait, 15 HP for Color TV Game 15. I somehow didn't even notice that before, but that's funny. And also, it puts it at the second lowest HP for an assist in the entire game. Anyways, this comes from Nintendo's Color TV Game consoles, which were their first ever home consoles and predate even the NES. CTG-15 is the second of these console series, releasing just 1 week after the first console, CTG-6. Both of them, however, mostly focus on virtual tennis. Or Pong. Yeah, it's just Pong, which might be less of a mouthful to say than CTG-15. And given that this is from 1977, this actually makes this the oldest thing in Smash Ultimate, going off of real-world first appearance. But also not, like, counting everything, like grass. I think grass was around before Pong, I'm not sure. As for the assist itself, while it does have the second lowest HP at 15, these counts are actually separated between the two pedals here, rather than being a combined pool of HP. While this kinda doubles the health pool, it also doesn't, as defeating one paddle will defeat the whole entire thing, so it is still low if you're able to focus just one paddle. Though it also has a knockback requirement to actually die, rather than just disappearing at 0 HP, so you still have to put in some effort. But okay, can we stop trying to kill this thing for just a second and actually see how it plays, please? Thank you. All this does is play a few rounds of Pong on the stage, throwing out a ball and bouncing it back and forth. The ball is a dynamic object though, and will bounce off of stage elements and even any opponents it hits. By messing with the sanctity of the match, and also getting lucky, I was able to create a match where no one scored. Towards the end there, the ball was moving a lot faster than normal, but since it can't score from the top or bottom blast zones, I guess it all just worked out. If one of the paddles fails horribly and does miss the ball, there'll be a few seconds where the score updates and the paddle shakes up and down in rage before starting up again. Yeah man, I feel that. Additionally, running into the paddles yourself will dish out knockback, but surprisingly not damage. It might seem like the knockback is set, but no, its scaling is just very slow. Even at sudden death range, it won't really be KOing you, especially because its knockback is aimed towards the middle. You know, the same direction that they're hitting the ball. They're actually pretty consistent with it. Also, a fun detail is how the paddles don't have knockback in the little rest periods between scores, which I thought was neat. Now, if you want to participate in the game without getting a concussion, you can actually reflect the ball too. Doing so doesn't make it destroy the paddles, though it will make you immune to the ball and have it hit the opponent instead. However, this is just for the ball of this round, as the next ball that spawns in will still be able to hurt you, so you'll need to reflect that too. Though there was this one instance where the reflected ball did deal damage, I have to imagine it found itself in just the perfect spot to where it avoided the, I guess, bounce box of the paddle, likely present at the top and bottom. Speaking of reflecting, these paddles aren't just good at bouncing the ball around, as they also serve as reflectors, making them just a tiny bit harder to kill off. They are a bit different from other reflectors though, in that even though they technically own the projectile now, the second paddle can still reflect it, but this couldn't go on forever unfortunately, as the first paddle will not touch it again. But for some items, for whatever reason these rules don't apply, meaning if they also don't despawn, then the paddle could keep bouncing it back and forth over and over again until the assist disappears, which is honestly more impressive than keeping the ball around. Though once again, if you can aim it at the very top or bottom of the paddle, it'll ignore the reflector and deal damage. Anyways, that's a lot of information to just spit at you, but even with these basics out of the way, I think there's a lot of fun to be had in just observing this assist trophy, letting matches play out and just seeing what happens. Like this one time where the ball got stuck at the very bottom of the stage. When this happened, the paddles just completely froze. Like they were absolutely gobsmacked from this. Or watching them play on a really huge stage, where the ball just takes forever to move across. Or this time where the left paddle, my goat, got an insane trick shot below the stage, and then right after, the right paddle just served into the stage and scored on itself. It's hysterical. Oh, right, the score. You see, this assist lasts for about 15 seconds. Man, they really love that number. So that means if we try to maximize our score here, we only have that 15 seconds to do it. Just leaving things on their own with relatively low input from ourselves, the highest score I ever saw was 3. Given that there's about 2 seconds of downtime after each score, plus about 2 seconds at the very start, it makes sense that the remaining 6 or 7 seconds are usually used up on the back and forth of the paddles. A few interesting notes though. While there were up to 3 scores, I never naturally saw a 3-0. Every time one of the paddles was in the lead, it felt like the other one would just lock in a bit more, with the one that was in the lead throwing for content, but that's just on an Omega stage like this. While there are a lot of stage restrictions, and understandably so, given how the ball dynamically interacts with the stage, I thought about what would be the funniest and went here. Now watch this. A natural 3-0 because the left paddle could not handle the tower. The assist always starts with the ball spawning on the left paddle, throwing it out diagonally up. And with this layout, that just has it bounce right back. The perfect setup for us to try and reach the coveted 4-score game. And if you get lucky to have the paddle miss all of the bounces back at it, you can get it. The right paddle wins with a score of 4, that's unbelievable. Now in watching this, I realized that it was great, sure, but there was enough room to squeeze out just one more score if everything was perfect. So I went back to a normal stage layout in order to test out a new tech with Falco, where I just throw out a reflector right in front of the paddle that's about to serve. It didn't always work, but this would occasionally let me get an instant score out, where I was able to get a 4 score even on here. But with it not quite working out here, I decided to combine the two methods, and after a lot of attempts, I finally got this. A clean 5-0 sweep from the right paddle, who won by doing nothing. It's actually insane how precise this is, by the way, but even this attempt wasn't perfect. Though it's hard to say for sure if 6 is possible, given that, again, there's a delay period between when this score happens and the next ball gets served. I think, hypothetically, if you are able to get a reflect score instantly after every single serve, a score of 6 is definitely possible, but given that the paddle seems to eventually adapt, I'm not sure how likely that even is. Oh, also I finally thought about spirits, but even in the fights that spawn this assist is still on a 15-second timer, so nothing changes there. And no matter what, the score that the assist preview shows, being a 2-6, is definitely not happening in a normal match anytime soon, unless a method gets discovered that makes assists remain immortal even if you can't grab them. So for now, I'm happy to call it there, so we can finally move on. Sheriff is an uncommon assist with 27 HP and only one restriction, mementos. My guess is that on the Persona 4 themed mementos, everything is yellow, and you can imagine how that would look. I don't know, I think they should have allowed it, that would have been funny, but whatever. The Sheriff comes from the game called Sheriff, how original, which was released in 1979, so even older than Pac-Man, though still not quite as old as Mr. Pong here. Speaking of Mr., looking at the arcade machine, apparently our Sheriff here is actually named Mr. Jack. Good to know, good to know. Jackie Boy here moves in a jagged manner, which helps give him a choppy feeling that replicates how he appears in his game. And while he can only move in one of 4 directions, they aren't completely on a grid. Or I guess they are on a grid, but it's still small enough to where it allows for a lot of different positions. His shots are also limited, though this time to 8 directions. These shots are spread out in timing, but it seems that sticking close to the Sheriff makes him feel threatened and starts to shoot more aggressively. Also, you can sometimes see him aim back and forth as he's choosing a target, which is funny. Anyways, this bullet deals 14% and has some pretty solid KO power, so given how often he can shoot, this can really mess you up. Unfortunately, the bullet cannot be reflected anymore in this game, though it can be shielded. But remember, Mr. Jackson here can't shoot another bullet until his first one disappears, which usually happens when it reaches a blast zone. However, the bullet also disappears when you shield it. So it's very possible that if you shield a bullet really close to him, he'll shoot again and again in super quick succession. Even a Shield Monaldo art Shulk kinda gets eviscerated, which I think is really funny. Oh yeah, and speaking of Shulk, I just kinda thought to test it here, but the Sheriff does indeed have a proper back hitbox that gets affected by backslash, with it being determined by which direction he's facing, just like you'd expect. This is how some other assists work too, though I did find that for other ones, their back hitbox is the same spot regardless of where they may seem to be turning, which is kinda interesting. And lastly, when you murder the Sheriff, he'll turn blue and make this pose, same as when he dies in his game, which is just a nice detail. I mean, it's a bit harder to notice in this game given how he just instantly gets launched and exploded when he dies here, but it's still there. The Devil is a rare assist who cannot be KO'd and has so many restrictions. He comes from the game Devil World, where he functions similarly to how he does here in Smash. He He points in one of 4 directions, and the camera moves in the opposite direction. He can make this shift a total of either 4, 5, or 6 times. I never really saw any more or less. And he is capable of moving the camera in the same direction twice in a row, but he's still limited to exactly where it can go. This is because the shift in camera also comes with a shift in blast zone. So you can see and exist in even more parts of the stage than you otherwise would, which is kinda cool for exploration, but obviously if he had no limits on where he can move the camera, he could have it go up again and now the whole entire stage is outside the blast zone, which would kinda suck. Now obviously there's a lot of stages that I'd want to use this on just to see more of that stage, but that's why there's this gigantic restriction list. Even then, there's still some fun things to see, like this one I've gone over before, where you can stand on top of the Great Plateau Spire if the devil shifts the camera up, even though normally touching the spire will kill you horribly. But yeah, I really can't understate how many stages are restricted. This is 68 total. For reference, the moon was at 52 stages, so in a sense the devil is more restricted. But also remember that the moon couldn't appear on even the Omega and Battlefield variants of 40 of these stages, whereas the devil is a bit more lenient in that department. So if you'd like to consider the Omega and Battlefield variants as different from the base version, then even if you combine the two together, then the red boxes here count as 2 stages and the orange is just 1, and with that, the moon has a total of 92 stage restrictions, and the devil has just 78. But you know, if you don't want to count the Omegas and Battlefields as an extra, then yeah, Devil easily takes the cake. Which is a shame, but whatever. And speaking of restrictions, if you have the camera zoom changed in training mode, when the Devil spawns in, he'll override whatever camera mode you were in. And then when he disappears, the camera will return to normal, but not whatever setting you were at. Here in this case, I should be in the zoom mode. Plus now, even pausing doesn't have the camera zoom into the player like it normally does. So it's a little glitched, but it'll go back to normal the next time you change the zoom value. Also, apparently he's just unable to spawn in Custom Smash outright if the camera is set to be fixed. It's interesting that they wouldn't just have the camera be able to go back to whatever it was beforehand. But anyways, I think I'm gonna end things there for now. I spent a lot of extra time on a small amount of assists this episode, but I don't usually do that unless I'm genuinely interested in some of the things, and as it turns out, it's actually kind of fun to watch the Pong assist play Pong. Anyways, as usual, I'll spend this outro to plug myself a bit, still showing off my side channel. I recently decided that I'll start uploading music onto there too. That way I can feel a bit more motivated to get back into doing that, without having to worry about ruining the flow or algorithm of the main channel. I've already got 2 songs over there, so subscribe to that if you want to see more of anything else from me. But with that, I'm just going to wrap things up here, while also saying thank you to my gorgeous patrons Burbo, Pixelboy, Raighne, Still700, and everyone else for their incredible support. Stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.